even if we've run into the hardest roadblocks and we can't really even see how to go, we're not going to throw in the towel on somebody whose innocence we believe in, period. They'll be with us forever, and we'll keep trying and looking at new angles.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step.
Just let go.
We have John Hardin on the show today, and he has quite the story. He is a private investigator who has years of experience in public affairs communications, and he is known for bringing media and public attention to situations where there's wrongful conviction. He is the co-founder and executive director of Proclaim Justice. Now, you might be aware of a case called Memphis Three. This is a well-known case where 3 individuals were wrongfully accused and convicted and sent to prison for decades. In fact, John's co-founder of Proclaim Justice, Jason Baldwin, was one of those individuals who spent 18 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. John played a critical role in freeing Jason, as well as the other 2 individuals in Memphis Three. Now together, they are doing just that for other people. In this multifaceted conversation, I talked to John about what it's like to knock on doors, to look for answers, sometimes answers to situations that happened decades ago, trying to find evidence, trying to find clues. I also talked to John about persistence. So what it's like to wind up short and not find what you're looking for, but continuing to get up each day and fight for what you believe is right. That resilience with John is tangible. I really appreciate how he starts off with his Why Not Now story, because you can see how this is a renegade, true and true, that we have on our hands here today. And thank goodness he asked himself, why not now? For more information about Proclaim Justice, which is an incredible organization, head to proclaimjustice.org. And without further ado, here is John. John, welcome to the Why Not Now show. Thank you for joining me today. This is a treat. And in the spirit of Why Not Now, can you tell me about a time when you had to ask yourself, why not now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. This is a real treat for me too, Amy Jo. So thank you for that. My why not now moment was more of there is a particular moment sitting on the water in Seattle, but there's a little bit of lead up to that. And probably like a lot of your listeners, it was 2012. And I was in the middle of figuring out my life. I had 3 big things going on that was leading me to question how I wanted to proceed with my career and my life and that kind of thing. And so I was contemplating starting this nonprofit organization that frees victims of wrongful convictions. So kind of the big 3 things that were going on at that time for me, The first two are pretty standard. I was just not happy in my career. I had built a successful career in a field that I loved, which was political and legislative consulting. That was what I wanted to do for a long time, and I was able to make that happen. But then in 2012, something inside me just was not happy doing that anymore. I felt like I could help more desperate people, more immediately desperate people, and I just wasn't enjoying it. I just didn't feel like I was living the life that I wanted to live professionally. So that was a big thing going on, and all the internal struggles that go with that, or am I being irresponsible with thinking about a career change, all those things. Another big thing that was going on was I lived in Little Rock, Arkansas at the time. I'm from Arkansas, and it's a beautiful state. Little Rock's a wonderful city, but my then wife and I and our son, we knew that we weren't going to stay there. And so we were thinking, okay, what's next for us? I was actually offered a job in DC. It was the director of another nonprofit organization, and it was a mission that I believed in. I've got a ton of friends in DC from all my political days and going back and forth. So we went, looked at places to live. I accepted the job, and we got back to Little Rock, and I still just did not feel good about it. And that was really frustrating to me, because if I'd had that opportunity just 2 years earlier, it would have been kind of a dream position for me. And I couldn't figure out, okay, exactly why am I not fired up about this? So we made the decision to move back to Austin, where we lived before we moved to Little Rock. And the big thing that was going on, that was all of this is in the shadow. A few months before, in late 2011, I was part of something that changed my life. And what that was there were 3 men wrongly convicted in Arkansas. They were convicted as teenagers in 1993. One was sentenced to death. The other 2 were sentenced to life. They came to be known as the West Memphis Three. And you know, we can talk about their case and things that led up to that, to me getting involved in their case. But the short of it is, I was a part of the team that what had happened with their case was there were all these supporters. There were documentaries made about the case, and a book written, and it became a cause celeb. Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam, Natalie Maines of the Chicks, and Peter Jackson, and all these people were advocating to free these guys. But the people in Arkansas were essentially saying they're from outside of here. They don't know our state. They don't know any of those things. So when I was in Arkansas, me and a small group of people started an organization by Arkansans for the purpose of educating Arkansans about the injustice in that case. And we worked really hard, and there was, tears and frustrations and running up against roadblocks and all these crazy things that were happening. But finally, the hard work paid off. And in August of 2011, we got those guys out. And sitting in that courtroom and listening to a judge tell these 3 men, Jason and Damian and Jesse, after all of this hard work, after all the torture that they had been through, everything, for him to look at them and say, "Men, you are free to go." And we're all just sitting there weeping. I mean, there's Ed Vedder that's crying over here. There's, all of us friends are just holding each other's hands and crying so hard because we knew what had gone into it. And I just wanted more of that, frankly. And that was what was shadowing everything as far as what do I do with my career? And I just want to keep doing this work. So I flew to Seattle a few months later, and Jason, one of the West Memphis Three, was living in Seattle. Told him what I wanted to do, what I was thinking about doing. I'd sought a lot of advice before that as far as starting this organization. I told him it was going to be very hard, that we wouldn't get paid from the organization for some time. And all he said was, "John, I want to take the tragedy that happened in my life and advocate for others." So we looked at each other and said, okay, this is the time. So essentially, why not now? We hugged each other's necks on the water in Seattle, and we've been off to the races.
Wow. Talk about a why not now story. And as I'm listening to you, there's so many things that are just clicking and sticking. And when you said, you had traveled to DC, you'd considered this other role that would have likely been a dream role had it been a year or two prior. it just didn't feel good. You didn't feel good about it. And then fast forward, and as a private investigator, I'm thinking about that intuition and the, what you've learned along the way, but also what you've probably been able to formalize and in understanding versus just this feeling that's loose. And so the work, first of all, the work that you're doing is incredible. I'm fortunate to have attended one of your fundraisers and hearing from Jason and the story and the West Memphis Three in general, but then everything else, and hearing from some of the families of the individuals you're advocating for. It's absolutely incredible. So there's so much I want to talk about with that. But can we touch on, I saw you nodding about, formalizing that ability to really kind of quickly read into what's going on that may not be tangible. Do you have any insight for us? Because you're in such an interesting role.
Well, I think there's the internal considerations that people have where if you just know something doesn't feel right. And I relied on a lot of people who I trust, from a congressman whose opinion I valued that I worked for, to some of my best friends, to other nonprofit people. So I knew internally for me that wasn't right. So I think there's just a natural instinct that we have for ourselves. But if you're going into private investigative work, it is a learned skill. You can have some intuition and some maybe natural abilities, but it's a learned skill to pick up on maybe deception or maybe where it's going, maybe what somebody's saying, and let your intuition be guided by facts and knowledge of the case. And almost every time our intuition is correct. So it's a learned skill, but I think the biggest part of it is just being ready to listen to people and whatever they have to say, and knowing what you know about the case going into it. Our other staff investigator, I am a private investigator and the director of the organization, and our other private investigator is Danny Waxler. And he and I, it's so funny, we will have, we go knock on these doors out of the blue in whatever state we're working, and these people often haven't been talked to for 20 years or something like that. But we discuss our instincts, our intuitions, what we think the person may say. We talk about that ad nauseum before we're knocking on any given door. And then our instincts are almost always in line with each other, leaving that interview and how we're conducting that interview and that kind of thing. So that gives me confidence in my instincts, because somebody like him, they're in line with this almost every time.
That's really interesting. And being able to kind of compartmentalize when you need to, facts versus instinct, and then blend them together when it becomes a superpower, I imagine, probably isn't always as easy, because we just have this internal bias voice that doesn't shut up.
Yeah. In the work that we do, sometimes the most challenging thing is, we will form an opinion that we think may have happened in the case. And we think this person or people may be the key interview. And when they tell us something that we were just completely wrong about, and of course we don't show them on our faces or anything, but then our instincts and knowledge of the case do kick in, where we can immediately pivot, and then we get more information out of them, and we've solved cases that way. So you've also got to be able to know when what you thought going in is not what's actually happened in the case.
Have you found that it's gotten sharper and more accurate over time? You have become more efficient and better?
For sure. And there's also there's ways to pick up on deception. I want everybody to know that there's no such thing as a human lie detector. There's all these shows about, casework and criminal justice and all that stuff. And they're entertaining shows, but that's not how it works. Somebody looking up and to the left doesn't mean that they're lying. And a lot of police have been told that means they're lying. So, but there are skills that can be learned as far as how their patterns of how they're talking, maybe it changed, or the tense of the words that they're using have changed as they're talking. And Their chronology is all messed up as you kind of circle back around to it. And so there's skills that can be learned. And for sure, over time, those have been sharpened.
One of the things that I've been thinking about ever since, learning more and seeing some of the examples of your cases is I just have this vision of you, John, knocking on doors and being so persistent and resilient. Because sometimes this takes, well, probably more than sometimes, most of the time, this takes years, right? And
Years.
You are probably looking for a needle in a haystack that may not even exist. And how do you stick with it? I mean, I imagine, when do you decide when to turn the towel or throw the towel in or not? Maybe that's not even a good question to ask. I don't know.
No, that's a fine question to ask. It's a great question to ask. We do not throw the towel in on a case unless we come to believe that they're not innocent. At that point, we let them go. But every other time, even if we run against every single roadblock that you can imagine, from difficulty finding witnesses to the key witnesses being deceased, to prosecutors fighting you every step of the way, even if we've run into the hardest roadblocks and we can't really even see how to go, we're not going to throw in the towel on somebody whose innocence we believe in, period. They'll be with us forever, and we'll keep trying and looking at new angles.
And is that something that has just always been a core belief from the get-go with Proclaim Justice? Like, that was it. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it this way?
Yeah, the guiding factor is totally, these are the folks who we eventually, through a pretty long case vetting process, if we come to the decision that we believe wholeheartedly they are innocent, they are our family. We get to know their families. We love their families, their mothers, kids, sisters, all of those people. And they are always on our mind. And that is the core tenet. And it's something that I'm very proud of with this organization. I think that's something that we do very well because we genuinely love them. Mm-hmm. So we don't let go of them ever unless we find out they're lying to us, and then we let go of it quickly. So, yeah.
Wow. And you could see that sentiment. You can't fake that. And I could see and feel that from hearing, from some of the families that you've worked with. Yeah. It's just, it was tangible. It was so incredible and moving. Your angels. So what do you do when you feel like you have tried everything? Like everything you could possibly think of, again and again and again, and you don't know what else there is to help someone that you feel and is innocent. What do you do then?
So if we've run up against a complete roadblock in the legal process, it all starts with the investigation. I mean, that leads into the legal stuff. But if we've done all we can to get ready for the lawyers that we hire to, file the various writs and stuff like that, we get to a place where we're confident in the investigation. We work with the lawyers, they go through the process, and let's just say that we are denied every step of the way, from appellate courts to state Supreme Courts to federal courts and all that stuff. Sometimes what we have to do is wait for an administration change in the governor's office of whatever state. And there's just nothing else we can do. Now, of course, we will continually rack our brains. Did we miss something? Let's go back through the file. Is there some tidbit that we missed that could lead to new evidence, which is almost always the key in these cases. But sometimes you're just kind of waiting for the right ear in the governor's office to be receptive to executive clemency applications and stuff like that. So, but you never give up hope. And the funny thing is a lot of these folks that we work for, they're the ones that we do our best to remain hopeful for them, but every one of them, or pretty much every one of them, ends up giving us hope when we reach the end of an appeal or whatever. And we're so disappointed, and we're so disappointed for them and their families and everything. And they're the ones that give us the hope to keep going.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. What's something you feel like people don't understand about this whole scenario and injustice in general?
A big thing that they don't understand is, and we touched on it some at our last fundraiser, we focus, rightly so, on the people who are doing time on death row or life sentences or whatever. And that's all we do is life defined by us as 20 plus years or death row cases. We focus on those individuals. And of course, they're the ones that are suffering the most. But people don't understand the ripple effects of wrongful convictions, what it means for a mother to have to see her son incarcerated, and the generational impact that has. We're working for a client right now who's absolutely innocent. And he was arrested when his son was 4 months old, and he did not get to raise his son. And now the generation, his son has struggled through life, and he would have had a much better chance if his dad was there to raise him. So the generational impact, the ripple effects of family, and frankly, the ripple effects of a community when we have shown that our criminal justice system is very fallible, that leads to some lack of confidence in what authorities are doing in the general public. So that's a big ripple effect that I don't think people understand is just how widespread every wrongful conviction, the negative impacts are on those wrongful convictions.
Yeah, the huge, and just even in a community and generational, to your point. So if we had to go back to you as a child and in your childhood, were you always so driven and persistent and resilient like this?
Well, I will say that I was always seeking out trouble, in the sense that I always had an inherent problem with authority, for better or for worse. And that definitely presented some challenges to my parents growing up. But so I just always had it in me to question why people who maybe don't have what others have, or something like, why are they treated a certain way? And I was always ready to get angry on their behalf for whatever reason. And so that's been a thing that's gone through me my whole life. Now, the persistence and all that stuff, that was through life experience, where I learned that it doesn't help just to get angry at something. You've got to do something about it. And that's, to some degree, that was learned skills. And then to some degree, the more I've learned about the world and how some of this operates, I just can't help but be persistent.
I think about you hugging Jason on the boat and you're just being in the courtroom and the ROI of hearing that those three were free. And is it safe to say that's what gets you out of bed in the morning? Absolutely.
That is the holy grail of what we do. When we're able to walk a client out, dream of doing that is absolutely what gets me out of bed in the morning, on a professional level, and then largely a human and friendship level. I tell people that the day that Judge Laser said that to Jason and Damien and Jesse, that was the happiest moment of my life, except for when my son was born. I mean, it was just unbelievably moving. And yeah, so every time I've been able to be there when one of our people gets out of prison, which for our people, I've been there for all of them, but it is the best thing in the whole world. It's so, we had a client in Little Rock, and he was on death row for 15 years. He was convicted in another part of the state, but we got him out. And the day he gets out of prison, I was able to take him and a couple of other folks to the best steakhouse in Little Rock. And he had been in prison for 17 years at that point. And just seeing all of the sensory, stuff going on around him. And I mean, he'd have never had a meal like that even before he was locked up.
Right.
And just seeing that first bite of great asparagus and potatoes and steak, and watching the look on his face is the best thing ever. I love it.
Incredible. Oh, incredible. What's one thing you find yourself learning over and over, John?
That you do have to be persistent. When I said it's a learned skill, despite my love for them and the love for the work, sometimes it's really hard. And sometimes I can get really discouraged in a profound way. Mm-hmm. And you can either let that eat away at you, or you can kind of find yourself that morning or that evening or whatever and say, okay, I don't feel like being persistent right now, even the stakes as high as they are, but I have to be. So that's an ongoing lesson that I learn all the time.
I think about the pressure and just what we've mentioned before about the families and how you do have access to talk to them, be around them, and learn and hear from them, and you are their only hope, right? So that's a lot of pressure.
It is.
When you do get discouraged, are there go-to things that you do to help yourself work through that? Yeah,
there are. And I guess we all have to find what this is for ourselves, but I am a big hiker and backpacker. So if I'm just having a really funky day or two because we're just running up against brick walls, then I make sure I go out on a 4 or 5 hour hike. I think that's worth it to, as part of you that says I should be looking at case files, but no, I've got to go do this. I'm a drummer, so I'll just get out a lot of aggression by sitting behind the drum kit and beating the hell out of them. And I think whatever it is for each individual, we have to find what it is that helps us recenter ourselves and helps us get out that aggression or that frustration and find some peace and calm in our head. Otherwise, you're just not even going to be productive when you're trying to do the work.
It's so applicable to people in all areas of their professions and careers, but it's you're really dealing with life and death here, and it's a different level of pressure for sure. I always think about these musicians and just celebrities who have shown up, especially in the Memphis Three case. How did that all kind of come about? Because I think that's so fascinating how culture and the halo of their celebrity was able to help and shine a light. But can you talk through that just a little bit so everybody understands?
Yeah, for sure. So the Memphis Three case, there was, they were just convicted in Arkansas in 93 and nobody heard from them again, really. But their case in particular did garner a lot of headlines nationwide because the theory of the state's theory was that it was a satanic ritualistic killing of 3 8-year-old boys. So there are all these sensational headlines, and that led Sheila Nevins, who was the longtime president of HBO Documentary Films. She was interested after reading a headline. She sends Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky, two documentarians, down to Arkansas. They got permission to film the trial, and this documentary, Paradise Lost, comes out in 1998. And that is what Eddie Vedder, that's what Natalie Maines, that's what Johnny Depp, that's what Peter Jackson, they saw that documentary, and just because at least Ed and Natalie and Peter, that's the kind of people that they are, they then proactively were reaching out, trying to figure out how they could get involved. So that's a testament to who they are just as people, without them being these successful musicians and filmmakers and all that stuff. That's what led into their involvement. We're fortunate that Lars in particular from Metallica, he's become a friend and a big supporter of the organization. And they got involved because as part of the evidence used against the three was that they listened to the satanic music, which Metallica was one of, according to the state. So they kind of got roped in that way. But at the end of the day, they most of them caught wind through the documentary and just proactively reached out to help the guys.
That's so cool. And I think about, what year, here we are talking late 90s, and then where we are now with the original film, and maybe, we're seeing more of that, right? So that can't be a bad thing necessarily, to be storytelling and sharing to expose and increase awareness.
Absolutely. And that's something that we are big believers in. And fortunately, we've got people who have stayed involved in the organization that work in those fields. So we're a big believer in, we try to go about things the easy way. We will find evidence. We will go visit with the prosecutors and see if they will work with us. More times than not, they don't. In fact, they never do. But then we're not scared of pulling out all the stops. If you want press conferences on your court steps, if you want all this bad publicity, okay, to hell with it. Let's go. Let's do it that way. And that was a big reason that the three got out, was because of these great storytellers, these great documentarians. And they went down there thinking that they were going to film what would drive three teenagers to be involved in a satanic cult and murder 3 8-year-old boys. And they left there thinking, oh my God, these guys are innocent.
It's amazing. Yeah. The power of those forces coming together. So a lot of listeners have either heard of or heard from her themselves, Susie Batiste, on this show, because she's been on many times. I call her my friend and mentor. And you have an interesting story about how the two of you met and how she's on your board, right? Your board of directors. Yeah. So can you share this? Because it just
Susie tells it better because she just mocks me when she's telling the story. She just totally mocks me and makes fun of me. And how it happened was, we had to take a last second flight to El Paso for one of our clients, and he had 2 days to make an important decision. So Jason, Baldwin, and I jump on a Southwest flight out of Austin. And this one had to go through Dallas, and I was in the C group. So I get on, I only had one backpack, and I'm the type of flyer that I keep my earbuds in and I don't look at people. I just want to kind of be left alone. There's a middle seat on the front row, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to jump on that. And Susie, as it were, was sitting right to my right, and you could tell that she was wanting to be chatty, so she keeps kind of trying to, all right. And to hear her tell it, I don't want to talk to her. She just makes this face and makes fun of my voice and everything. So she, once I took my earbud out to order a beer or whatever it was, she just kind of jumped and started talking to me. And then there was no turning back. So she, and it was wonderful. As you know, I mean, Susie's got just such a wonderful presence, and she's so beautiful of a person. And then you talk to her for a minute and you're hooked because she's so fascinating. And so we spent that 30-minute flight from Austin to Dallas talking about her business. She asked me what I did. She's from Northeast Arkansas, close to where this case happened. And she said, hey, do you know anything about this West Memphis Three case? And I was, yeah, I do, and
do I?
Yeah.
You're so humble. You're like, yeah, I was there.
Yeah, I know a little bit, just a little bit.
How random.
So I'm letting her ask, because she said, that story just drove me crazy. And I hope the men are all doing okay. And I said, well, Susie, as a matter of fact, Jason is a few rows behind us.
No way.
So once we get off the plane, I'll introduce you. And I did, and we sat there talking, and Susie cried and hugged him, and she was just so happy to see him. But neither she nor I shut up that whole flight. And so once Susie left Jason and me, Jason says, man, how long have you known her? Is that one of your good friends? And I said, no, about 30 minutes now. So she's just been such an important person in my life ever since. The organization aside, she's just a very dear friend of mine. I love her.
Same. The two of you, that you can't call that a coincidence.
No, you sure can't. And because I don't even think I paid any attention. I just was probably looking down at my phone with my earbuds in and sat down. And she was fortunately not going to let it go that way. So,
which isn't always normal. She's not exactly always a chatty so this was rare for her too. So rare form.
It was. Yeah, so she became one of my best friends in a 30-minute flight right there, I think.
Yeah, I love it. I love the support and just the, even if you look at your board, it is diverse in background, man. I mean, there's a really interesting mosaic there that probably provides a pretty strong calculus.
Yeah, as anybody who's worked in around nonprofits or even contributed to them or whatever, a nonprofit does not work without a good board of directors. It's just impossible. And over the course of time, we've been fortunate to have some amazing board members, some who have cycled off but are still involved, some who are still there. And you're right, the diversity of their careers and their circles of influence and their willingness to work has been truly, I mean, we would not exist without this group of people. And it started with Natalie. I mean, once Jason and I said, why not now? Let's do it. And our first meeting was, we called Natalie and we flew to LA where she lives. And 10 minutes into what we're looking at doing, Natalie says, I'm in. I'll be on the board. I'll raise money, raise awareness, whatever. And so she and Margaret Riley, who also lives in LA, she's a television and movie talent manager. And they jumped right in and they have just been unbelievable. And then it's just flowed from there. Just incredible board members.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And so proclaimjustice.org, for those listening, definitely check out the website. How can we support you? What can we do?
Yeah, so the big thing is, as a nonprofit, we always need donations, and we appreciate anything from the $25 monthly recurring contribution to bigger donations. I think a misconception about us, because we do have, the support of some notable people, quote unquote. I think folks think that we're flush, but it's always a grind. The work that we do is very, very expensive and time consuming. So if people feel led, that is a very tangible way. You can easily click onto a monthly recurring or a one-time donation, whatever you do. If people who are listening are so led, then we are constantly trying to get in front of potential bigger donors, $5,000 and up. And so if that rings anybody's bell, then please get in touch with me. That's another lifeblood of what we do. And then the other thing is we do not put a case on our website unless we believe fully in their innocence. We don't promote them on our Instagram or any social media. So there's always things on our social media that come around the corner, whether it's Amazon wish list being fulfilled for some of our clients. People can just click on there and they're sent right to the prison. So that's a really cool thing that people can do. Christmas cards during the season, it's such an uplifting thing for them to know that people out there care about what's going on with them. So those are a couple of pretty easy things that folks can do as well.
That is really cool. I love that too. So I keep thinking about, this decision and that career crossroads where you were. You've been in the political and legislative world, and if you were to go back to yourself at that crossroad, you had visited DC, you're trying to figure out that next move, and if you could say something to yourself, what would it be?
Don't be scared to ask, because there were so many times where I was unsure of, do they really want to hear from me? Will they respond if I'm asking them this or to do this or that kind of thing? And I wasted a bit of time by being afraid to ask. So I would go back and say, write the letter, make the phone call, set up the meeting. All they can do is tell you no. And maybe my confidence has grown over the years of doing this, where I can summon the confidence needed to hear a no or whatever, and it doesn't affect me. But back then I would say, just go ask. Stop wasting time. Wow.
That's valuable. So valuable. And thank you for doing this important work and leading. And it's pretty inspiring to see the amount of fulfillment and purpose you have and feel, and knowing that this is really difficult work. This is hard.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I mean, just all the awareness of wrongful convictions in general, our cases in particular. So, everybody can follow us on social media. It's all Proclaim Justice, and just follow along with what we're doing. It's so important that people just know about it. So thank you for giving us a platform here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll be following along.
Yeah, sounds great.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?